Jason Gilbo here at JGilbo11, taking a look at some pitching options for tonight's slate. 14 games. We have Coors, we have Clayton Kershaw. Let the debate begin. We'll start with Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, the pricing is, always kind of the issue with him. FanDuel, you can always do it, but you're also sacrificing Coors bats by not getting by selecting Kershaw. 14-3 on DraftKings, higher than he was last week. And look at last week, I believe he was 13-8. Through a very solid start. And only hit about 2.5 times value. And I just look for a little bit more out of my pitchers than that, especially in tournaments. So Kershaw, for me, I just feel like it's a bit overpriced on DraftKings. Looking at a slider, it's dropped off a little bit this year. It hasn't been as effective as it has in previous years. Velocity looks fine, but the lack of the slider movement is a little bit of an issue for me right now. But FanDuel, I do think he's an option you can use. You can use in cash. You can use in GPPs. DraftKings, I'm probably not going to be heading down that road tonight. I just feel like it's a little bit more expensive for my taste. But you look at the Giants, tough time on offense this season. Against lefties, 21st in WOBA, 20.8% strikeout rate. ISO sitting at just 132. In that ballpark, obviously very friendly for pitchers. You also take a look at, what Kershaw does in terms of walks to this season, more than what I actually thought he would get here in the first couple months. He went that huge stretch without even walking a guy. Pitching against the Giants, a team that sees him quite often. Over 378 bats between this lineup, 167 average, 26.4% strikeout rate. Kershaw, 17 starts at AT&T Park in his career, 1.36 ERA, 7.5 strikeouts per start. Once again, the pricing is just a little bit of an issue for me. I think you can go down and save some guys and still manage to get some bats in tonight. But, if we do get enough value that pops up, if we do see some guys come in and, get those punt values, I guess you can fit them in. But at the most part right now, I'd rather take a mid-range pitcher and get some bats in tonight. I think that's where I'm going to be headed. Unless somehow Coors doesn't play. I know there's rain in the forecast, but it doesn't look to be too severe. So that would be the only thing that would just kind of throw me back on Kershaw all the way. If you're not looking at Kershaw, if you're kind of thinking like me and the price is a little bit egregious, you can go down to Danny Duffy here. Duffy's at a decent price tag, about $3,000 difference on FanDuel, a $4,000 difference on DraftKings. Jason Vargas didn't blow up last night, but it wasn't obviously a great start. You still look at Chicago, a team that's not particularly thrilling against lefties. The contact rate is weak. And the strikeout rate is, down a little bit more, but still not all that special for the White Sox. I know they do have some right-handed bats, but none that I'm particularly worried about. You look at Duffy, 3.51 ERA last season, backed by ERA estimators, 26% strikeout rate. Strikeout rate down 21%, but is allowing just 29% hard contact rate compared to 37% last year. Hasn't allowed a ton of home runs. He's missing a lot of bats. 15.1% swinging strike rate. That's up 2% going back to last year. Throwing the changeup and the slider a little bit more than usual. He threw his fastball quite a bit last year, 59% down to 47% this year. Slider usage up 5%, changeup up 7%. And given the fact that, hitters have a 162 WOBA off his slider, 20% swinging strike rate. Changeup, same swinging strike rate, 0.94 WOBA. I'm definitely okay with targeting Danny Duffy. White Sox are a team that do struggle against changeups. So I'm definitely okay with kind of firing away with Duffy in all formats. I do think you can kind of, use him and feel pretty good about it. Unlike, Vargas, I think you might be worried a little bit, but I'm not buying into the White Sox being able to just kind of do that night in and night out. So I definitely don't mind Duffy. I think he's a solid option. We get to some other guys here. It's not a particularly thrilling pitching night. Toronto, St. Louis, this one's an intriguing matchup really on both sides, and we'll touch on both here. Michael Wacha, I don't mind. I feel like he's really underpriced on DraftKings, 6,800, 77 on FanDuel. I don't mind. I think FanDuel is a little bit more of a tournament play. I guess borderline cash if you want to just roster some bats with them, but 68 on DraftKings, that's a decent price tag for him. So I don't mind using him. You look at Waka, I mean, has been decent so far to start this season. Not a flashy pitcher. Isn't going to go out and strike out, 10, but against a Toronto team that has been very bad against right-handed pitching, getting out of Los Angeles late last night, making a pit stop in St. Louis to play a series before going back home. Missing Troy Tulowitzki, 27th in WOBA right now against right-handers, 24.1% strikeout rate, 25th in ISO. Busch Stadium, not a good power park. You look at Michael Wacha, I mean, has been solid. I mean, 28.2% strikeout rate against right-handers, so that's definitely not bad. This is a year where he did struggle a little bit last year, but holding a right-handed heavy team to a 292 WOBA, I could certainly see Wacha being in play. I think he'll come in with some decent ownership tonight. I don't mind him in all formats. On the other side, Marco Estrada, a guy who's kind of just outperformed, FIP and XFIP over the last few seasons. Strikeout rates picked up a little bit more than last year. You look at this St. Louis side, 19th in WOBA against righties, middle of the road strikeout rate, ISO, hard contact, nothing thrilling jumping out at you. Estrada, 24.2% strikeout rate. He is walking a lot of guys, which is why I'll resort to just GPPs, but the 9% walk rate does scare me a little bit. Average hard contact rate, missing a lot of bats, 12.7%. Allowing a 294 WOBA to lefties, 313 to righties. You look at last year, home runs were a bit of an issue, but held both sides of the plate to under 300 WOBA. As I said with Wacha, it is a decent spot in terms of just, the ballpark, cooler weather. So Estrada's an intriguing GPP option to me on both sides. I think he'll go a little bit overlooked, a little bit under-owned as well. As far as talking value, guys, and this is strictly value on DraftKings, we'll start with Jesse Hahn. I'm just not buying the Angels 4.5 run total right now. I just can't. I don't think that offense is very good. I think in terms of Hahn as an SP2, I'm okay with it. I mean, Hahn's issue in his career has always been against left-handed hitters. 332 WOBA. This year, holding him to a 288 WOBA. 6 of the 7 walks have come against lefties so far this season, so obviously he's still a little bit shaky against them. But looking at the lefties in this lineup, I mean, Cole Calhoun, yes, he's the standout lefty here. Other than that, it's Ben Revere and Cliff Pennington. For the most part, I mean, that's it. As far as right-handers go, is holding to a 14% hard contact rate this season, career 263 WOBA against. Angels ranked 21st in hard contact, 24th in WOBA, strikeout rates 24th against right-handed pitching. I'm just looking at Hahn. I mean, yes, he's still getting the work around Trout, Pujols, Calhoun, but outside of that, I mean, this is a lineup I do think he can get through and throw a decent outing. I'm not expecting a win. I'm not expecting 10 strikeouts. I mean, it's just, mainly for some salary relief, so I'm okay with that. And at his price tag, I mean, 5.5 is very cheap. FanDuel, you don't need to go that route, being that he's 300 cheaper than Wacha, who I trust more. But Hahn's an intriguing option. Patrick Corbin we'll talk about here. 5K on DraftKings. I mean, these are guys you could possibly, pair with Kershaw and get away with it and maybe work some salary in. You look at the Padres. Given that it's in Chase Field, still a little bit worried. I mean, Corbin hasn't been awful there, but has been a little bit shaky. Home run still could be a threat, obviously, with Will Myers. Margot, decent from the right side in terms of power. So that's the one thing that concerns me there. But the strikeout rate is up in terms of the potential tonight against the Padres. And at 5K, I think he's a reasonable tournament shot. The only thing that worries me is obviously that ballpark and the potential for a blow-up. So definitely just a GPP arm. As far as everyone else goes, I mean, Core's not touching pitchers, obviously. Cashner, Santana, we're not looking at. Dylan Covey, no thanks. Feldman, Davies, no thanks. And then a lot of East Coast games are going to be potentially rain delayed or outs. So it takes some games and some pitchers off the board anyway. So those are pretty much the 5-6 arms that I'm keying in tonight, and not really looking anywhere else. So that's going to wrap things up here. You can head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com, check out our great tools and content.